Visual effects maestro Guillaume Rocheron is nominated this year for his visual effects work on Sam Mendes' war epic 1917. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor here at Gold Derby. First of all, Guillaume, congratulations on your Oscar nomination. How exciting.
Thank you so much. Yes, very exciting.
So talk us through the morning of the nominations announcement. It was a very strong group of films shortlisted this year, vying for 5 slots. And so it was probably extra exciting to hear that 1917 had made the cut.
Yeah, very much, because, every year, and this year is definitely, not changing that, visual effects always innovates and bring new ways to tell stories, right? And it's, there's so many movies rely on visual effects now to, create things that, are not from this planet, or, create events that are, kind of exceptional and unfilmable. And 1917 is a bit different from all these movies. It's a movie about World War I. So, visual effects is not really here to create spectacle, and it's not a movie about the explosions and the action and all these things. So it was a very different use of visual effects. So it was a great honor to be amongst the group of people that the 5 movies nominees, because my hope is that our peers that voted for to put us in that list appreciated that we use visual effects slightly differently, to create the one shots, and to kind of create a cinematic experience that is very different from anything else that you've seen. So yeah, that was really it's always a great honor to be kind of nominated by your peers.
Yeah, when each of the shortlisted teams had to present at what they call the Bake Off.
Yes.
A lot of us were hearing about what was being said and what was being done, and apparently the presentation that you guys gave was very well received. What was the feedback that you were getting? And after that, were you expecting maybe that a nomination was possible?
Well, the feedback after that, talking to many colleagues that I know and many people that I've been seeing for years, every single person said, wow, you guys have done something very different, and you've attempted something that is very, very different. And you have to remember visual effects now. You have visual effects in romantic comedies. You have visual effects in absolutely everything, and they're not always the center of attention, but sometimes they are absolutely necessary to tell your story. And we've done obviously visual effects is the work that we do on the computer in post-production, but it's also the work that the special effects team does on set, right? And I think people really appreciated the balance of trying to shoot as much as we could practically with some very challenging practical effects and very innovative practical effects, and then a use of visual effects that was completely unexpected. Basically, it's the first time in my career that I've been asked to kind of conclusion of 2.5 hours that kind of is continuous and never stops. And so people responded really well to that. As far as saying that I was expecting a nomination, you never know. Look, the work this year is exceptional across the board. You look at every movie that was there, and they were remarkable in their use of visual effects, and so varied as well. So I think people really kind of picked up on the fact that we've attempted something that hasn't been done before in that form, creating like a one-shot movie in an exterior world that never repeats, right? It's a journey that goes from A to B, and it never stops. It's not like a close quarter movie where you're in a room and you can go through a corridor and you can just you can repeat things, and the design and the concept of it would be easier. So I think that's what people responded to. The uniqueness of the work, and obviously seeing the bake-off presentation was literally the first opportunity we had to talk about our work, because the movie literally just came out, and we finished it literally, I don't know, like 4 weeks before or something like that. So
wow.
It was really kind of down the wire for us. And it was literally the first time I was presenting the work in front of my peers, and I was kind of like talking about it. So people also were like, oh my God, it's like, this is really unexpected what you've done and your approach and how you've done it.
Yeah. I can just tell you from my personal perspective that I was completely blown away. What an achievement this film is, technically and creatively, in terms of the way that it was done. And obviously, we all know now that it wasn't literally one shot that went through the whole movie. Although, I mean, a lot of it, there's a lot of long takes in this film.
Yes.
What I'd love to focus on, I understand what Lee Smith did and Roger Deakins did in terms of getting that. But what did you and your team do to contribute to that really amazing achievement in making this film look like one shot, and it's so immersive and so part of the action?
Well, it's a real collaboration. To do something like this is really, you have to collaborate incredibly closely with Lee, who edited the movie, and then obviously with Roger, who kind of designed all the camera moves and where the camera would go and things like that. And I think for us the idea was like, we need to be completely invisible, and that's the greatest challenge that we face, because when you do a one-shot movie, it's you don't want anything that will distract the audience into thinking that they're being tricked, right? So our job to kind of make the movie look continuous is obviously you start from pre-production, and kind of work with all the departments to kind of identify, okay, we're going to try to do a blend here and then a blend here, and then in post-production, obviously, once you assemble everything, which is what Lee did, and kind of really worked on getting the best performances and the best moments, and kind of like crafting the pace of the film, we kind of took that, and then we're like, okay, now we need to make all these sections that go off one after the other completely seamless, blending seamlessly into each other. And what was interesting is, some scenes, the movie was shot in the UK, and some scenes are shot in the Salisbury Plains, and some scenes are shot in Shepperton Studio, and some scenes are shot in an Olympic water park. And on a normal movie, that's what you do, because you shoot scenes based on where the best location is for each scene, and where you get the best landscapes, and like there's a lot of logistics that go into that. But our trick was like, well, he always needs to connect, like the scenes needs to blend one into the other and flow together. And when you have Roger Deakins designing all the camera work on the movie, he kind of designed the work to be the camera to not be a third character, right? The camera needs to be kind of like you need to kind of be immersed with those two kids walking through their journey. So it's trying to kind of basically put the viewer in a position where you're kind of immersed in the action and in the moments. And when you blend shots together, or whatever type of visual effects that we had to do on this movie, it was very important to never betray that, right? To, never at some point, because we had to kind of go from a location to the other, suddenly our transition makes the camera move slightly strangely from, shot to shot, because that's, we're trying to connect them, right? So we had to put a lot of thoughts into, the camera moves, right? And making sure that, we would never betray basically what Roger had done during principal photography. And that was really our greatest challenge. And that's what kind of drove, a lot of the technical choices and the methodologies that we used to go from shot to shot or scene to scene, basically. And, some transitions are very easy, and easy, I would say simple. It's like they walk past a tree and then suddenly you can use the tree to disguise a little kind of cut between two takes. But we try to avoid that as much as possible, because if you do it too systematically, your audience is going to start to, kind of to pick up on it, right? And doing a movie like this is a bit of like, it's a bit like doing a lot of little magic tricks, right? You have to kind of every transition, between shots, you have to, kind of come up with ways that, first doesn't feel like you're repeating yourself in terms of, if we, for example, said, hey, the camera is going to tilt up to the sky and then, come back down, on our characters, and you start to do that 3 times in a movie, they, at some point, people are going to pick up on it, right? So it kind of goes back to what I was saying of like, it's really, trying to be as invisible as you can, and also really study, how the camera is flowing through the scenes, how Roger had kind of designed that ballet between the camera and the actors. And as we kind of transition to a more digital work, that you basically don't feel that, the camera is transitioning from one place to the other, or from one set to the other, or, so that was really the kind of creative challenge of doing that. And obviously, as you said, the very long takes, because, I used to say when we were doing the movie, in visual effects or currency, or, our units, if I may say, are the shots, right? It's like, if you talk to anybody, they're going to be like, oh yeah, we've done 1,500 visual effects shots on this movie. And, it gives you 2 things. It gives you something that you can quantify, of just like, okay, I know it's going to be 4 seconds, and, you have to make something work for 4 seconds. And in the moment there's a cut, your brain resets, right? So it gives you an opportunity to kind of fool your audience in believing that what they're seeing is real by using cuts, right? And then obviously it allows you to kind of, all our tools and all the way we work, it's, the computer doesn't do the work. It's actual artists working on, using a computer as a tool to kind of create all this beautiful work. And, how do you divide that amongst artists, right? Because, an artist is used to work, to animate something for 4 seconds, maybe 10 seconds if it's really long, 20 seconds if you're extremely ambitious. But, we have some shots that lasted for 7 minutes. So,
oh my God.
It's, the logistic, we had to really rethink, how we approach the work, right? And how we design it as well. Because again, the cuts give you the opportunity to reset the brain. So, the photorealism of what you're showing, it only has to work for like 4 seconds or 5 seconds, and then boom, suddenly you have a cut, and, the flow, makes you, kind of believe, it makes the illusion work often, or helps you make the illusion work. And when you don't have that, suddenly everything becomes exponentially more complicated. It's, I like the example of, No Man's Land, or, like the river sequence, for example, because, No Man's Land is a 7-minute sequence. And obviously there's a fairly large scale digital environment there, to the horizon, and, with like, all the dead trees and the terrain and all these things. And, it never cuts away from it. And, it's not like, there's, fast camera moves or, anything. Just like you get time to like study it in great details. And, it's like, and, the way you design it too is like, you're going to start, the scene, and you're going to put a tree in the midground, and, I'll show it to Sam and we'll be like, okay, good, that looks great. It's like, it's great compositionally. And then 2 minutes after, the camera kind of wraps around, and then that same tree that you had positioned that looked good from one angle suddenly is not working because it's in the middle or it gets in the way. And, when you have shots and cuts, you can cheat that. We do that in visual effects. You do that on set. You do that all the time. It's like you put the tree somewhere for one shot and then you cut to the reverse and you just move it on the side, right? So it just made everything exponentially more complicated, creatively and logistically.
Yeah, you touched on that scene in particular at the beginning when they're going through the trenches, and also the jumping off the ledge into the river really had me boggled for a while. There's two other scenes that I found incredibly astonishing personally, and you probably have talked about this at length already, but the first thing is the dogfight where the plane crashes. Incredibly effective, dramatically and also technically, and also I don't think there's a better scene for me personally than the nighttime scene at Ekus. So that was like just something else. Talk us through the challenges undertaken by your team in scenes, like they're very climactic scenes in the film, aren't they?
Absolutely. And the plane crash is a great example of the philosophy that, we kind of used on the movie, because, it's on a traditional movie, you would just frame your planes, having, like dogfight into the sky, cut to your actors, and then, the plane gets hit. You cut back to like a pretty nice shot of the plane crashing on the ground, cut back to, your heroes kind of running away, then cut back to the plane settling down in position. And, you have a lot of by cutting, you're able to use different techniques basically for every single shot, right? And, kind of make it work that way. In our case, what I really love is like, you watch the planes in the sky for 1.5 minutes and, they're kind of fighting, and then, the German plane gets hit and then, kind of crashes into the barn, and or two heroes, jump out of the way. But then without looking away from the plane, then they like stand up and go rescue the pilot in the plane cockpit. And, for me, it's like, I love this little kind of like magic trick, because you're just like, well, obviously the planes are CG when they are in the sky. How did that happen that those planes got to the sky, to then the ground, to, the actors being able to actually touch the plane and, expect the pilot from it, right? And it was a good, combination of different elements. We did digital planes, when they're in the sky, and, our two actors are kind of looking at just an empty sky. There's like a little drone for the eye line, so they kind of know where to look. And then, the plane gets hit. And then as the plane, kind of goes towards them, the plane is still digital. There's still no plane, at all into the photography. And then as the plane kind of like crashes through the barn, we did shoot, the special effects team, led by Don Tui, kind of created a replica for us of the actual plane. And then, we put it like 20 feet up in the air on a ramp against a blue screen. And, we kind of like launched it and crashed it through the replica, like a little replica of like a wall for the barn. And what we did is we kind of took our digital planes and then transitioned the digital plane into the practical special effects plane that we have designed. And then we added the combination of the two to the empty shots with the actors. So that gets you the plane, from the sky onto the ground. Then the next issue we had to solve is like, okay, well, now we crashed the plane. How are the actors going to interact with it? And, the way we did that is we, as the actors kind of dodge out of the way and like stand up, we like cut, we stop the take. And then, overnight, we, the art department dressed the plane post-crash on the location where we were, and, destroyed the barn and all these things. And then we got the actors to kind of repeat the same thing. And then with the plane basically on location, so then they could go touch it and extract the pilot and, and keep going with the scene. And then what we did was then transition the shot the take that had no plane with the digital plane added to the take with the plane on location, right? So it's a 3 kind of way transition where you go from like a digital plane to a special effects plane to then a shot with a real plane, on the location. And that was really it's a lovely little magic trick, because if you don't think about it, it's very effective and it works, and you watch it. But the moment you just like, you give it some thoughts, you're just like, oh my God, the plane is in the sky, and I kind of like watched it, and then like now the pilot is with them, and they touch the plane and they like extract the guy from it. So that was really challenging scene, but also very kind of rewarding in terms of like creating that immersive experience of never cutting away from your subject. The other thing that you were mentioning, the burning city at night, I think is a brilliant collaboration between Roger Deakins and our special effects team, because there's something that is very unique about that scene is those flares that kind of fly up in the sky, and the idea was like, well, we need a light source that travels and that burns bright enough, and after a bit of research, there was no real convenient way to do that, just with lights, and Dom kind of put together, magnesium flares basically, and magnesium flares burn very, very bright. You ignite them and they have an immense amount of brightness, and basically, they were engineered, once we did a few tests, they were engineered to burn for 22 seconds, which was the time that Sam and Roger wanted, like the illumination and the flares to travel. And they were, rigged to travel 130 feet arcs, right? So they were rigged between cranes. And, I think it created something that we've never really seen before, that kind of like, almost surreal light source, but that kind of burns and travels through the space. And then what we did in post-production is, the scene was shot on a backlot in Shepperton, and Dennis Gassner, the production designer, built a pretty hefty section of the set, basically the path, for our actor. But what we did is extended the vista, to the horizon, made it like much bigger, so it was the scale of a of a full city or town. And then there's the burning church, right? There's that giant burning building that obviously was impossible to build because of the scale of it, and to set on fire was also another real kind of challenge. It's like 100 feet tall or something like this. It's a really large structure. So this was a collaboration between Roger and visual effects on this, where Roger kind of designed like a wall of lights, basically like stacked over like a few rows, and he kind of programmed them to have extreme brightness, the color, and the flicker of fire to kind of create the illumination and the contrast for the photography. We didn't put any blue screen or anything like this. It was literally the actor against, that kind of giant bank of lights. And then what we did is that we kind of cut out the actor from it. And then we kind of went to the north of France and did a digital scan of a church that we kind of created a replica for it. And then we ran it through, kind of softwares to kind of destroy it, right, and simulate the collapse and the destruction, and then we kind of created digital fire and kind of completed the imagery like this. But it was a real this scene is like really a collaboration between all of us to kind of really try to create something unique.
Yeah, and it absolutely was that, Guillaume. So look, good luck at the Oscars. It's your second time. You won The Life of Pi. Maybe you might go for 2 for 2 for 1917. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Everybody go to goldderby.com right now, make your predictions, and click subscribe so you can watch all of our other chats as well.